You're listening to Feel Good Astrology with Louisa Tanner Munson. To request a personal reading with Louisa, go to www.feelgoodastrology.com.
Hi, it's Louisa Tanner Munson, and this is part 11 of the Saturn Through the Houses series. And in this episode, I'm going to be looking at the effect Saturn in the 11th house would have on your birth chart if you're born with it in that position, and also what will happen as Saturn transits through your 11th house, and what are the opportunities for it. So I want to start off first of all by just saying Saturn in the 11th house isn't as drastic a position to have Saturn in. Saturn seems to have quite harsh effects in particular signs, in particular houses, but in this house it's not that drastic, and I think it's one of those positions where you can really manage the Saturn energies quite well. So my very first thing to say is don't fear it. Really, please don't fear it. And the second thing I'd say is just, what is the 11th house? Astrologically, the 11th house is a house that has taken me years to really come to terms with or to understand. I've always really struggled with it. At some level, it represents our friends and our external communities and our values in those communities. And it also represents organisations and larger communities that we are somehow linked with, be it charities, volunteering, whether we're tendering jobs and ourselves and our skills to larger organisations. It just shows all our interactions at an external level. I also think of it as the law of attraction house, the what you think about, you bring about house. I always like to think of the houses in terms of polarity to the other side, and the 11th house has a kind of relationship with the 5th house. The 5th house represents our personal creativity that comes from our sacrum. It's our sacred calling level of creativity. It represents romance, sexuality, giving birth, and our hobbies. I think the 11th house is similarly creative, but on an external level. So the 5th house represents our creativity that we look after. For instance, you will have a baby, or you will have sex, or you will have a relationship, and romance, and that's all created in your mind, but on a very sort of low-key level. Whereas the creativity that takes place in the 11th house happens in collaboration with others, and your success with it is to do with how collaborative you are and what your feelings are. Now, having a strong planet in the 11th house can really show your immediate feelings about friendships and collaboration, and it might be something that you grow into. In the case of me, it's definitely a house that I've become more selective in and also more knowledgeable in. In the past, I think the 11th house represented some form of pain for me, and that might be the case for you too if you have Saturn here in your birth chart, because Saturn represents where we have limitations and learn harsh lessons and feel restricted. So it might be that you feel restricted within social groups or even church groups or any kind of groups, but you feel restricted to be yourself. You feel like you almost have to fit in with the norms of the group, and feel insecure when you don't. It also shows that you might attract very dominant groups to join, that almost take control over your creativity. So it's not really collaborative, more that you're serving a group diligently and with perseverance, as represented by Saturn. So you want to watch out for that, because you don't want to be subservient to your collaborations. I think the power of the 11th house is that you are in flow and are an active participant within your collaborations with others. So that's all very good. The 11th house also represents our in-laws and our stepchildren if we have them. So again, having Saturn here could show that you feel particularly limited, or restricted by those people, and that you feel that your relationship is dampening rather than exuberant and open and sharing. The other thing with the 11th house is its natural ruler is Aquarius, and Aquarius is a star sign that is a bit anarchic. It's ruled by Uranus, so it represents freedom and spontaneity and radicalism, in the idea of radical new ideas that change. So it's about change and creating movement. The 11th house isn't one of airs and graces. It's about community benefit and people being quite level. So it's almost status free, really. It's very philanthropic. So having Saturn here, it doesn't really give you the chance to grow capital necessarily, in the financial sense or in the status sense, as it might do in the 2nd house or the 10th house. But what it does give you is social capital, the kind of collaboration capital or networking capital. So, for instance, if the way you work is in collaboration with other people, having Saturn here shows that you have a very methodical way of collaborating with serious people, serious career types, and that you almost hunt them down. You almost make a list of people that you want to collaborate with, and then you dedicate yourself to collaborate with them and serve them in a way of strengthening your relationships and keeping an even keel and keeping things quite philanthropic, which is great. That's fabulous. The 11th house, if you think of collaboration and creativity, this is why the 11th house also reminds me of the law of attraction, because the law of attraction is taking your creative urges and then handing them over to the universal energy of life and saying, this is what I'm inspired to do, and all the time I'm self-directing it, I'm getting in my way. And so it's almost like handing your project over to a higher force and letting life collaborate with you. And so I do really think that people with a strong 11th house have the ability to change their situations very, very quickly. And having Saturn here shows that you could have a very methodical approach to transforming your life using the basic laws of the law of attraction. Which means being very, very clear about what you'd like to achieve and the feeling of it. So, specify the feeling of what you'd like to achieve and how it would feel when you've achieved it. And then leave all the detail out. Don't say how you're going to get there. Just understand that life will meet you and life will find those opportunities and match you up with the collaborating forces that want to help you achieve that. So again, I think Saturn in the 11th house shows that you have the ability to create form and structure from your intentions using strong intentioning beliefs. And if you're not familiar with the law of attraction, then a really fabulous place to check it out, I think, is the website Abraham Hicks. I'm sure it's abrahamhicks.com. Bear with me a sec. I'm just going to pause this recording to find out. Yep. I would go to the home of Abraham Hicks, the law of attraction. It all started here. www.abraham-hicks.com. And there's lots and lots of videos and seminars on YouTube as well. So check it out if you're not familiar with it. Or watch the film The Secret, which I think is very good. And also What the Bleep is also very, very good. It just shows the power of your thought and intention creates an energy that the universe would like to collaborate in. So I think you've got all of that going on for you with an 11th house Saturn. It also shows that you're very serious about the people that you collaborate in and about your friendships, and that you honour and value them and almost want to protect them and guide them, and you find your authority through being collaborative. So maybe through having lots of collaborations with useful and powerful groups, or social media groups, or you use social media in a way to climb. But through your networks, you find your importance, which I think is also a very useful thing to recognise. So all in all, it's not a terrible position to have Saturn in the 11th house. A lot of it depends on your on the aspects. If you do have a T-square or an opposition to your Saturn in the 11th house, then I would just be mindful of the fact that if you do have in-laws or stepchildren, that if a planet goes over your Saturn or the other planet within your birth chart, then your relationships could get a bit strained. It might be that they view you as bossy or judgmental, or one of the negative Saturn words. It can be projected on you. But having Saturn here shows there is something that you can work at, that it is possible for you to work at your relationships in a cool, detached way and use your capital, use your social capital to influence people. So I'm hoping that's helpful. Now, if Saturn is about to transit into your 11th house, I would say use that energy and make it work for you. Really, really do. Previously, it would have been in your 10th house, changing your outward career expression and your ideas about your own authority, your highest form of self-expression, your highest dreams for your life, and also about reviewing your relationships with predominantly your dominant parent, most probably your dad. And so there's all quite a lot of heavy, hard-hitting stuff. And I would imagine after this has occurred, your career will be different and changed. Now, it might be in a better shape than when Saturn went through your 10th house. If it is in a better shape, then you'll be ready and primed to take your new career direction even further. And so I think it is a time when you really need to make the most of networking. So use all of the social media ideas that you can to network, but also think about ways that you can extend and change the way you work to meet with people from other companies and mutual organisations. Even think about how you can network with competition and how you can leverage your styles. It's a time to meet with customers, and it's a time to get really chatting with them and find out what they need you to know. It is a time to be busy and creative and collaborative and to work with people. I would write yourself a list. I mean, I would do this anyway. Kind of have a list of people that you admire and want to learn from, possibly be mentored by, or even offer mentoring too. But then, write a list and then just visualize that happening, and that you get the knowledge and you get the networking opportunity, and things like that fall into place. So I would use that. I would also use the law of attraction. So think about the collaborations you want and the direction you want them to take you in, and then just let life fill in the gaps for you. So I think having Saturn here in the 11th house is essentially a free go. It's like if you're playing a board game, you'd get an extra roll of the dice. It's not that terrifying as it is when it goes through other houses. I mean, that's just in my own opinion, obviously. And it can also show a strengthening of your relationships, your friendships as well. So this is a time when, after being very self-obsessed about your external image and what's been going on at home with your dad, etc., and your career, and you've taken more authority, it's time to take your foot off the gas a little bit and become more social and more accessible to people. So hopefully, I really hope that's useful to you, to sort of encourage you not to worry about it, but make the most of it. As with all these transits, they can last anything from a year to 3 years, but on average about 2.5 years for it to go through. The next position that Saturn goes in is the very last one, which is Saturn in the 12th house, and that shows a time when you'll probably go into yourself a lot more to really refine who you are at a fundamental level before you start this Saturn journey again. So make the most of this amazing, resource-rich, networked time, because when you want to go into yourself, I think it's brilliant if you've got useful people in the background that you can refer to when you need to. So make the most, build some very good friendships, and make them diverse. There's a fabulous platform speaker and author that talks about communication and networking studies that I used when I used to refer to her work when I used to do communication studies and deliver out training to different companies when I was in one of my most collaborative stages. And her name is Lil Loundis. I think that's how it's pronounced. EIL, then L, then her last name is LOWNDES. But look her up. But she suggests that you, when you arrive somewhere new or when you have a new job, that you build the Knights of the Round Table. It's brilliant, really. Really, really clever. And it's great advice for life and advice I need right now because I'm living in a new country. But essentially, you need to think about all the different people that you need to have in your life to survive, for your basic survival. It might be that you need a car mechanic, a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, somebody who's got links to government. So, write a really broad list of everything you need. For some people, it might just be you need to find out who you can buy organic vegetables from and who you can get a fish delivery from, or, who you can buy the best organic seeds from. You want to really think about your lifestyle and what you need to survive and draw up the list of helpful people and then make it your business to meet the very best people in the field or the closest people in the field who you might have some kind of link to. Because obviously that helps you out massively. Anyway, that was a little aside. Hopefully that's useful. And if you do want to talk through any of this, then just send me, drop me an email at louisa@feelgoodastrology.com. Hope to hear from you soon. Take care.
You've been listening to Feel Good Astrology with Louisa Tanner Munson, and this recording has been made possible by all you lovely supporters at Patreon. To request a personal reading with Louisa, go to www.feelgoodastrology.com.